This is a video to demonstrate the Tajima machine controller operation with a description of the buttons used to operate the machine. This particular model is a TEMX C 1501, or commonly known as the Neo Plus. And on the screen right now we have a design loaded and we're in cap mode. So we're going to demonstrate the use of the buttons. First button is the A button. When you press the A button one time, you get a couple of selections. The first selection is data input memory. When you press set, you'll be viewing all your designs in the memory. To load a design from the memory, use the dial to select a design, press set. You'll get a screen that says, "Are you ready?" Press set again. That screen said OK to move the frame to the location with coordinates. When you press set one more time, it loads the design and moves the frame to those coordinates. If you press E, it will not move the frame, it'll just load the design. Pressing the A button, going back to the A button again, we see we have a choice that says data input USB. We have a USB stick inserted in the side of the machine. We press set and it will read the USB. There's only one design on this USB stick, but you'd normally use the dial to select a design. You press set again, gives you a preview of the design icon. You press set one more time, you'll get the screen, "Are you ready?" You press set one more time and that loads the design to the memory. If you press set one more time and then one more time again, now you've actually loaded the design to the buffer, which is ready to run. So when you see the design in full size like this, that means you're ready to actually start that design. Okay, going back to the A button again, we have another choice that on this particular machine is LAN. If we press set, what we're looking at is our LAN connection to the PC through our router. So again, you would just use the dial to select a design, press set a few times, keep pressing set until the design comes up in full view, and then you've got the design loaded. That's loading from the LAN. So pressing A one more time, we have one last choice, which is delete. We're going to go down to memory delete and we're going to press set and we're going to select delete one design. You can select delete all and that'll delete all the designs in the memory. By selecting one, we're going to delete just one particular design. We're going to use the dial to select a design and then we're going to hit set and one more time with set, and that has erased the design from the memory. Okay, our next button we're going to go through is the B button. The choices here are listed. This particular model has 7 choices. The first choice, auto color change, auto start. If we press set, under normal conditions you should have yes, yes, yes. AC means automatic color change. Yes means yes, you want to do automatic color change. AS means automatic start. Normally you want to have this yes, that means it will start after every color change. And yes on the bottom means start with the same colors back to back to avoid getting 1B2 error codes. The second time we press B, we get needle bar selection, and this is where you program your colors. So if we hit set, we get a screen that shows us our design and it shows a default color selection or the previous color selection. The first color is highlighted with a yellow bar behind it. So if we want to change that color, we would just use the dial to select a new color and press set. Now we're down to the second color. Again, you'd use the dial to select a color and press set, and so on. Now if you need to go back to, say, the first color, what you can do is arrow up with the blue key and change the color to make the correction. One more feature that is shown here is to put an automatic stop in the color sequence. If you wanted it to stop after the second color, which we're on now, what you do is on the keypad you press the right arrow button and you'll get a blinking red arrow. Then you press set, and what that does is it leaves that red arrow there, which basically will stop the machine after the second color. This machine will stop at origin and it will give you a 1B2 message on the screen. After that you would just press start or do whatever you needed to do for whatever reason you wanted it to stop, say lay Solvay down or do some trimming or any particular reason why you may have had it to stop. Now the tricky part is removing that arrow. What you need to do is go back up to the second color with the blue arrow. Then you need to right click on the blue arrow again to get it blinking. Then you need to use the dial and turn the dial counterclockwise till the arrow goes away and then press set. And that is how you put in a automatic stop after color changes and how to remove it. And that is done in the B2 button. That's where you program your colors. The next button selection we're going to use is the B button again, and we're going to go to B3, which is data conversion. We'll hit set. This is where you would change the size of the design. The 100 and the X and the Y reference to the size of the design, that it's at 100%. The design can be blown up to 200% or reduced to 50% by turning the dial. It's not recommended to go more than 5 to 10%. As you can see, we can go down to 50% or we can go up to 200%. And again, it's not recommended to go more than 5 or 10%. The next selection on the B3 button, the data conversion, is rotate. That's the third selection down. So if you arrow down to the flower with the 0 and you use the dial, you can rotate the design to any setting you want from 0 to 359 degrees. Typically you're going to go 90, 180, and 270. Alright, and then you would press set, and that will rotate the design. The last choice is the M. The M is going to mirror the design. It's got two selections. The normal P is no mirror, and if you rotate with the dial, the P will turn to a backwards P, and that would mean you're mirroring the design. And you would press set, and that would mirror the design. Okay, so if we go back to the E button, press the E button twice, go back to our design, you'll see that the design now is rotated 90 degrees and it's mirrored, which obviously puts the text backwards as if we were looking at a mirror. Alright, the next selection with the B button will go right along, and you have repeat. This allows you to repeat the design as if you wanted to make patches. We won't go into detail on this, but basically what you do is you leave the first selection alone and you go down to the X and you put in the quantity of lines, or actually columns, that you'd like to make from 1 to 99. So if you put in the number 2 and press set, you're basically going to have 2 columns. When you go to the next setting, that 00 millimeters is telling you to put in how far apart from center to center of each of those designs you want the spacing to be. The next setting is the quantity in the Y, which would be the quantity in rows. So if we put 2 in there and press set, what we would have is 2 across and 2 up and down, which is 4 designs. This function, the repeat function, isn't used very often. There is a description in the book with more detail. So we're going to move on to the next selection on the B button, which is automatic offset. If you go to automatic offset and press set, this gives you the option of setting an offset for the design, so that when you run the machine and you put automatic offset in your color change function, which we haven't shown, it will move the frame to that programmed position. We will not go through this right now. We will go through this in some finer detail in another chapter. So we're going to skip this automatic offset. We're going to go back to the B button, and we're going to go down to AS after auto data set, which says no. You never want to change this to yes. So leave this on no. There's no reason why you would use this. Number 10 is the last selection in the B button we're going to use. If you go to number 10, needle bar color, and you press set, you're going to get a screen showing your needle bar colors. If you'd like to coordinate the colors on the thread tray to this palette, the way this works is when you first go there, the number 1 is highlighted on the screen. What you would do is use the blue arrow keys to move over to whatever choice you want to use to set the number 1 needle to. So in this case, we're going to set it to light purple, and then we press set and it changes to light purple. And the way to do this is to use the arrow keys to select the color and press set. If you turn the dial, what's going to happen is it's going to move across to the particular needle. So using the dial, if you turn the dial, you can see it changes needles. Once you get to the needle, say if you wanted to change needle 10, you'd use the dial to get number 10 highlighted. Then you would use the arrows. If we wanted to change it to red, we go down to the red using the arrows, and then we press set. Once you're done changing this, you press E, and it's going to ask, are you ready? Then you would press set, and it will come to the screen now processing, and depending on the model of the machine and the firmware or software that you have, it may take 2 seconds or it may take longer. In this particular machine with this firmware 4.61, I've noticed it takes probably about 20 seconds to do this process. So we're going to pause here and move on to the next C button here in a second. The next button we're going to briefly explain is the C button. When you press the C button, you're going to get a screen with the maximum RPM, and this button you can turn the RPM down to say 750 and press set to 750 and press set, and that would have the machine start at 750 instead of 800 or whatever speed was displayed. The next one is total stitch count, a design timer. When we press set on this, it's going to display the total stitches that the machine has run. Okay, it does roll over at 1 million. So this machine says 359, 847. If we wanted to zero it out, we just use the dial to turn a 0 there and press set, and we just zeroed it out. Below that is a timer in hours, minutes, and seconds, and this is going to tell you how long it took for the design that you just ran from start to finish. So when you finish a design and you go to this screen, it's going to tell you an actual running time, hours, minutes, seconds from start to finish of the design, including stop time due to thread breaks, or if you stop the machine in the middle of the design, it's going to be an accurate timer. The next button, when we press C one more time, we get frame forward, frame back. When you press set here, a brief description. FB means frame back. That means when you press the stop button to back up, it is backing up. If you change that FB to FF, that means frame forward. Frame forward, you'd have to press FF and set. That would mean that when you press the stop button, instead of backing up, you'll be going forward, so you can float through the design if you'd like. Down 1 is stop code. If you put a 0 here and press set, that's going to move it back or forward 1 color change. FB would frame back 1 color change, FF would frame forward 1 color change. The next line down is to move stitches. You'd put in a number here with the dial, and we would, in this case, frame forward 20 stitches if we hit set, because we have an FF and we're going to move 20 stitches forward. Frame forward 20 stitches. The beeping is just warning you that the frame is going to move. Below that is a FB/FF stitch unit with 3 selections, 1, 3, and 5. This is a setting for when you're backing up or going forward. You're going to back up 1 stitch increments, 3 stitch increments, or 5 stitch increments at a time. Normally we leave this on 1. The bottom is going to be a stitch counter, which is going to show how many stitches you've run into that particular design, where you are at in that particular design. So if you had started the design and went 300 stitches into it, there would be a 300 there. That's just a guide when you're moving through the design, when you're framing forward, framing back. The next choice is a preset halt choice. And this allows us to put in, if you want the machine to stop by stitch count, by data, by design amount, or to put in lubrication. If you wanted it to stop for lubrication message, normally you would change this to 10, and it would be 10 times 10,000. That would mean every 100,000 stitches the machine would stop and give you a lubrication message, which would be for oiling the rotary hook, for instance. That's the most common use of this button, the preset halt. The one on the bottom just before encode, normally you leave that on no. If you were to put a yes here, before the machine actually finishes the design, it will stop, and this would allow you to back up into the design if you needed to, because once the design is finished you cannot back up anymore. This is a good choice if you have a problem design or you have a large machine with production, and before you take the hats off the machine you want to do an inspection, and you would be allowed to back up into the design to fix any of the particular hats that may have stitches missing, or for any errors. C7 is the frame type, and this is where you would change the type of frame you have. Most common is the tubular selection and the cap selection. Some people also use a border frame. You just change it to whatever you want to put on the machine. You press set. It will be a now processing message on the screen. A few seconds later, the lights for the thread brake sensor will go off. You'll hear the motors go off, and then after a few more seconds the lights will come back on, the motors will come back on, and the now processing should clear. And as the machine comes back to life, you will notice on the main screen you have a different frame type. We went to tubular, so we have a little shirt symbol here. Alright, so that is the frame type. The last selection is stop at lower dead, and this is no, and you never want to change this. This is for a special taping function that not many people use, so you want to leave this on no. So this is the C button, all of its functions briefly explained. We're going to show the D1 button, what the functions are of that button. We'll press D1. First one is manual color change, and this is just to do a manual color change to a different needle. We'll dial needle 1, and the needle case will move over to needle 1. You dial needle 15 and hit set, and the needle case moves over to needle 15. It's just the manual color change function. Dial a needle and press set. The second one is the manual thread trim. You place a 0 in there, and when you hit set, the machine does a manual thread trim. Again, you just place it, you hit set on D1, you go to manual thread trim, you dial a 0, you press set, and it does a manual thread trim. The third one is return to the design start point. If you dial a 0 here, what happens is the frame will return to the point of the first stitch, actually to the point of origin. You just dial a 0, press set, and the frame will move to the design start point, which is usually the center of the hoop. The manual offset function works such that you would move the frame using your frame buttons. Then and you can do this in the middle of sewing. Then when you go to manual offset and you dial a 0 and press set, what would happen is the frame would move to the last stitch. So again, if you're running the machine and you need to move the frame in the middle of sewing, you stop the machine, you move the frame using your normal frame movement buttons, then you go to manual offset, you dial a 0, and when you press set, the frame will move back to the stitch it was at prior to moving the frame. The last one and most important on this window is the trace feature. When you open that up, it's going to tell you the needle position refers to the needle that the machine is on right now. So we're on needle 1 right now. And you have two options. When you dial a 0, you have a low, which is slow, and a high, which is fast. So by selecting the design that we're going to trace here, let's do this one here, and then by going to D5, D10 I mean, and selecting a slow, what happens is it traces the design slowly. We have a cap sash on here, and you can see it traces the design slowly. In this button here, if we needed to move the frame, we can use these buttons here and move the frame to correct the position while we're in this screen, and then we can retrace. We trace with high, you can see it moves a lot faster. So that's the D1 button, and that is the function number 10 called trace. Tells you the needle you're on, and when you select low or high, it will trace the design at a slow speed or a high speed. That's the D1 button functions. D2 has no selections unless your machine has the sequence option. If you have a sequence option on your machine, you would have functions in D2. So D2 doesn't do anything for most model machines.